This is Talking My Walking. I am Rodrigo Ribeiro, just another voice in the wilderness. Today I'm going to talk about why is it so difficult to break free from the influence of the web of deceit that shapes who we are and how we perceive the world and how we build our relations with other people and with the web of life. We all live in a world, in a in a cultural, ideological world. We don't live we live in a world that has been built by us. Okay. When I mean by us, we all, our participation is not equal. We don't have the same saying. We don't have the same influence on the process of building the world where we live, the reality where we live. By that reality, I mean both the cultural reality, the socioeconomic reality, and the political reality, which means that we do live in a reality that is basically built by people with influence, by people that have the tools, have the means, have the knowledge to do it for us. But they don't do it for us, for the common or the collective well-being. They do it to control us. Okay, this is not conspiracy theories. This is the reality of a class caste-based hierarchical society. Okay, if we do not understand it like that, we are just buying into the narratives and the ideological frames that transform us into peons and useful idiots, and sometimes in cannon fodder. We adapt to our environment at the subconscious level, which means just like animals adapt to their environment. For example, I can give the example of the finches in Galapagos, that, as Darwin described, there were differences between island to island of the finches, the beaks of the finches, because they were specialized. This example, what am I trying to say? It's the process of adaptation, of socio-cultural adaptation, is a process that occurs it's not a conscious process, it's a subconscious process. It's a process that is both physical, material, and ideological, and cultural, and social, of course. So which means that we don't need, we are not as like the same rules that goes for our body, all the processes that are required to keep our organism alive, to keep the homeostatic process, the homeostatic regulation in levels that are good for life. We don't need to be aware of that. All these processes and these regulatory systems, and they just happened in the backstage. They don't. We don't need to be aware of that. And the same happens with the cultural and the ideological adaptation process. We are indoctrinated and instrumentalized without understanding what's happening with us. It starts with a young age, because why does it happen like that? It happens like that because that is our environment. From our particular environment, family environment, to the proximity of our our neighbors, our friends, or whatever our social experience, and then through the schooling process. So we learn concepts, and we are when we are exposed to narratives that contain values and principles, and that will come part of our process of adaptation to our environment. And most of it, we don't know what's going on, because it happens that it's going on while we are just surviving, while we are living our lives, while we are learning. But the process of learning is not exactly the same as being conscious of what we are learning and the consequences of what we are learning, what is happening with us while that process occurs. That mainly occurs through mimicry and repetition. And all these models in our minds are becoming part of who we are shaping who we are. And this happens all across our lives. And unless we understand these principles, we never are able to confront the web of deceit where we live. And therefore, how can we talk about freedom or about understanding the world, understanding the nature of the reality where we live, where our lives, where we have to survive, without understanding these basic rules of acquiring knowledge and framing the world, and which it is ideological, political, cultural, and understanding the economy, how the economy works, what is money, and all the rest. These are, this is not about what I'm talking about. It has. We need this. This is an holistic approach that is more than understanding just an economic system or a political system. It's the understanding of the nature of the human condition and why we are and why we behave and are who we are in the context whether we consciously stick a label on ourselves, and we call ourselves this or that, Marxist, capitalist, anarchist, Christian, Muslim, this or that, or we do not identify with any specific label. We I mean, the problem is that when we identify with a specific label, we might become too proud of it, and then we become blind, and that might make us not being able to exercise a critical analysis that is always required, and also by critical analysis I also include the ability to have a self-analysis as detached from our interests as possible, as humanly possible. So, but besides that, all of us, ideas have consequences. I liked often remember that ideas have consequences, which means that all of us have on our subconscious minds a combination. It can be many types of combinations of ideas and ideologies and narratives. Of course, some of them are dominant. Some of them are the ones that the pillars of the structure that structure our ideological and cultural and political way of understanding the world. That's our lenses. And it doesn't mean that we understand them, of course. Because unless we train ourselves, and this is a crucial point, unless we train, and that's not what education is about. Education is about conformity, it's about compliance, it's about acquiring knowledge and skills and develop skills in order to fit, in order to adapt to a place in a certain society, in a given society. Okay? Or being part of a process of those that want to transform society, and then they might include you. But it's always as I started, it's always the few that are dictating the rules. Okay? Dictating the rules by which the ones that we need to follow if we want to succeed in whatever field we believe we believe it's where we are happy, or where we have curiosity about, or we are interested, or whatever. So the point is that we are not trained, not at home, not in school, not by society, not by culture, not by hearts, to be a critical thinker, a true critical thinker, not just by criticizing, okay? Because criticizing, we are all able to criticize, and no, it's not about that. It's about understanding what the deep, how the operating system, what happens, what is going on inside us, inside our minds, that have the power to shape our identity, to shape how we perceive ourselves, and how we conduct our lives. Because it's about trust. What do we trust? Whom do we trust? And this is very important, because this is what is at play by those who spend who spend lots, enormous amounts of money and resources to confuse us, to alienate us, to divide us, to do to do whatever they can in order to keep us in a state or delusional or ignorance that we don't even perceive. We never go to the roots of the problems, the material problems, but also the cultural and ideological pillars that are required to sustain how we perceive the material world, how we understand the material world, the relations of power. What do you think about what has merit? What do you think about who deserves what? What do you think about people feeling entitled to certain things by excluding others? So all these things need to be understood. If you are not able to distance ourselves from the cacophony, from that is always going on and is part of the game, and then we start slowly but steadily building a conscious, critical understanding of the very human condition through our own selves, and about the world, about the relations, about everything that makes us humans. And by doing it, we slowly try to unveil the reality of the web of deceit, that we understand the layers, the veils that are between us and the reality itself. So this we cannot this is a process that is a never-ending process, and is a process where it's not about doing it alone, because this is a collective process. I need the input from others in order to correct myself, in order to see in which points I might be strong and the ones that am I weak or wrong or incorrect. So this is not about following, because I always say it again and again, it must be not about following authorities, experts, leaders, saviors. This is wrong. It's not about people, it's about ideas, it's about trying not to stick labels, or we might, or at least when we proudly state that we are Marxists, or we are capitalists, or we are this or that, we need to understand the risks that we do not become overwhelmed by the ideology that we believe is right, because there is no and that any ideology is totally right. And this is important to understand, because if we do not understand the reality as a process, if you don't understand that we need to see things in a relation to the reality, to the material reality, to the social reality, then we just become useful tools to someone, to some kind of organization, political, economic, cultural, whatever. And that's not the point of life. That's not the point of building a community, to being to a national and international community for cooperation and for a civilization, for the civilization I imagine as the ecological, holistic civilization. What we need to consider, what we need to discuss is I mean, we have a global civilization, okay? That's what we have now. Is forget about globalization in the sense that we used to understand it, and forget globalism. And by forgetting, I'm not saying that we should not take this concept into account, but the point is that we have a global civilization. The world is not anymore, it has never been, okay? Don't get me wrong, it has never been terra nullius, okay? It has always been full of life. Life doesn't need to be concentrated, it can be dispersed as it should be. But it was the planet Earth was full of life, has been full of life for millennia. Especially if we consider this last the era that we are living. So this idea that the world, there is a global civilization, which means that this global civilization is defined by global trade, okay? That is not going. Global trade is a reality, even with these sanctions and blockades and everything that is going on now. Global trade is a reality. Every time I go to the supermarket and I buy something that is not produced locally, like food or whatever, vegetables or this or that, most things I buy, I always read, and it's there, have 90% of the time is made in China. Okay? All items and devices and this and that. From very simple things. You know? Very simple things. So, trade is globalized. If you think about people traveling, it's also globalized. You know, people travel every day. I don't even know how many flights there are daily crossing. You know, people crossing the globe for whatever reason. You know, just business, holidays, whatever. So There is also the needs for energy that we need. Most countries need to buy oil or other forms of energy from certain parts of the world where it is more concentrated. So we have global trade, but we also have a global culture, a default culture. The consumerist, capitalist, which means for-profit, commodified culture is global. Okay, it is not local; it's global. It might have local characteristics, like the Chinese socialism. With the socialism with Chinese characteristics. Therefore, despite the cultural and civilizational differences that come from the past, there is these shared values and principles about the economy, about there is a certain conformity. What I'm trying to say, it's about a certain conformity to the consumer capitalist culture that is shared worldwide, and it has been. In my opinion, it has been one of the great successes of the U.S. imperialism, U.S. cultural imperialism. This first because it's very attractive. It's very attractive that we are always looking for innovation, for new devices with new features, and looking for new fashion and new this and new that, and this attracts us. This is kind of and it is worldwide. So we have global trade and we have a global culture. We don't have a global government, and what we had, it was the intentional policy of the United States of America, of the rulers of the United States of America, to impose global governance. And they tried, and they still, but probably now it is very difficult because people already know that there is that is not possible. It is unrealistic in the present days, unless nobody knows if we will descend into the Third World War. I mean, it's already kind of happening, but not. Okay. Let's hope that we can somehow survive, go through this stage of the imperial decay, the U.S. imperial decay, without a truly global war. So what we have this, what we need to replace this imperialistic civilizational paradigm that is at least, it is older than that, because it's older than capitalism itself. Okay, this oligarchic, imperialistic, is older than capitalism itself. But it is, especially, I'm talking about the last 500 or 600 years of imperialist capitalism, especially controlled by the West, with all the consequences. Some may be good, but if we think about the technological and scientific and social outcomes, we might. We can't. We tend to believe that it has been positive, and our comprehension about ourselves, human nature, and there is in terms of knowledge, there was advancements. I think we can use what my point is, in spite of all the negative consequences. The toll in human loss, in life loss, in ecological loss, in everything that has been done over these 5 or 6 centuries, in my opinion, it's a very ugly. It's evil, but we cannot change it. Okay, it's done. We cannot change it, but we can use the knowledge and the experience, okay, that we have triggered, that has been triggered by this system, this very system. The scientific knowledge, the experience, and everything that we today have is part of our reality, material reality and cultural reality and political and everything. We can use it to build, not to insist in the continuation and the preservation of this imperialistic civilizational paradigm, but to build, since we already have this global civilization, to build an ecological holistic civilization based on cooperation, based on international cooperation. And that is, to me, one of the important points that we need to invest, to train ourselves to go through this cultural and ideological conscious transformation process, that we need to train ourselves in order to understand that this is the reality we need to build. This is the transition we need. It's not green, it's not capitalist, it's not this, it's not that. It has to be a shift in how we perceive what the society is, what the civilization, what means to be civilized, and because what we do need a shift, a paradigm shift, but that paradigm shift can only occur if we train ourselves in order to to clean ourselves from the addiction that we have, the dependence that we have in the system where we grew up, that shaped who we are. And this is a process that nobody can do. It is not by, it can be collectively, we can help each other. But that's how the quote goes. I don't remember who said it. That men go mad in crowds, or in not in crowds, in crowds, and they just recover their senses one by one. This is not the correct quote, but it's just so, which means that we need to go through this process without attaching labels to us. It doesn't matter where we come from, that we believe in the capitalist system or communism or this or that. Of course it matters, that's for sure, but it doesn't matter in the sense that if we start to ask the right questions to understand why we believe what we believe, where does it come from, and if we start to understand the incongruencies and the manipulations and all the rest that is going on in order to keep a system that is not, it has never been meant to serve the collective good. Okay? It has been always, just think about one thing, for example, that is the very example of how the elites, the oligarchs and the kings and the emperors and the upper classes that have enriched themselves with the imperialistic plunder and through the killing of millions and millions of enslaved people and the destruction of the environment and everything else. And where is that wealth? Most of that wealth was wasted in building, in all that, in luxury, it has been evaporated, it has been not used. Most of it, I'm not saying all of it, but most of it, it was used for the whims, to fulfill the whims of psychopaths and sociopaths and narcissistic megalomaniacals and opportunists. That's why we need to understand that this has been always a wasteful, evil system that has also produced certain things, like, as I said, the knowledge we have and certain achievements that that could have been achieved anyways, but let's give it that it was the imperialist capitalist system that has been the reason why we have this kind of level academic, technological and scientific development. So, but let's use it now for a different purpose. But in order to be able to understand it, and we have a comprehensive understanding of the reality, or we will always be victims of manipulation. because it is how the system works. It is how the ideological machine, you know. We have the media complex, the academic complex, the infotainment complex, the public relation complex, the cultural and the artistic complex, you know, like Hollywood and maybe Bollywood and others around the world. You know, all these the non-governmental complex, and all these people involved in these organizations, they are paid in order to produce to produce the reality. I mean, in order to their function is to keep us divided, alienated, to be atomized. You know, what they don't want us to understand the reality, how it functions. Maybe they want us to understand partially. They want us to have a partial understanding, which means that is a manufactured truth about how it functions. But it's in order to deceive us, to keep us, to keep the belief that it only depends on us. You know, it doesn't matter when you see the society breaking apart, you know, just falling apart, more and more people being unable to keep a roof over their heads, families destroyed, the jobs, no access to a steady job, not any social program. Everything that is public is destroyed and privatized, and they still tell us the same story, that is just that what you need is to do this and do that, and you will be good, which is a lie. But some of us, or too many among us, still believe that. So this is all. It is not easy to connect the dots, but it's not impossible. But we need to do it. We can only do it if we do it through a conscious transformative process, where we ourselves do not, we need others. As I said it so many times, I'm going to repeat it again. We all are pieces of other people's knowledge and experience. Okay? That's what we are. But besides that, we have to have the conscious, the intention to do it in an intentional way, to go through to the process, a transformative process that is led by us, not by others. In order to understand, because if we care about freedom, about individual freedom, we need to care about collective freedom and collective well-being. One doesn't exist without the other. And we need to understand that in order to have, if we do care about individual freedom, we need to care about individual comprehensive understanding of the reality where we need to survive, of the environment where we need to survive. Otherwise, how do we expect to enjoy that freedom if we are being manipulated? and deceived. What we need is to develop the cognitive skills, the critical thinking skills. We need to train them. They are natural, okay? They are innate, but they need to be developed and trained. And I always say, if we do not train ourselves in understanding how the logical fallacies work and many other ways to manipulate perception, we might believe, because we always tend to have this kind of belief that we are able to navigate this swamp of to cross the swamp of lies and misinformation and manipulation and whatever, but we don't. If we do not do the homework, if we do not intentionally train ourselves, and if we already start from the assumption that we can do it because we somehow do not need, somehow we have this intrinsic ability to do it. We don't. We have the ability, but we need to develop it. Because, and why? Because the innate abilities, they have been hijacked by the indoctrination and the instrumentalization that all the process that is part of the domestication process that we go through since since childhood, okay? And as I said, we don't know. We just do what we are supposed to do. We learn through mimicry and repetition. We don't really know what we are learning. It doesn't matter what kind of temperament and personality you have. That's how we learn. We might have show some resistance to certain impositions or certain rules or whatever. That's normal. But it doesn't mean that we do understand what's going on at the systemic level, and much less at the multi-layer level that of the world where we are learning through being exposed. Because we learn through being exposed, not through any critical understanding of what's going on. And we, as I said, basically we are not trained to become, to normalize critical thinking and critical analysis, comprehensive, holistic, of the reality where we live, of who we are, and why do we become who we are. Why do we understand the things the way we do? And what's going on around us? Because we are influenced by many things. They can be even contradictory. So there is always contradictions, and there will be always the need to make change, because this is a process. This is not about acquiring something. This is not buying something in the market. This is a process. It's something that is going on in a living organism. And that's why we cannot just think that we can trust our senses or our intuition. It doesn't work like that, because our intuition, the intuition comes from somewhere. You know, nothing we believe comes out of the blue. I mean, we can have eureka moments, and there is breakthroughs and things. This exists, but it doesn't come out of the blue. There is always a context. In the case of the human mind, there is always implicit memories, long-term memories, dominant narratives, models that we have, that they are stored somewhere in our brains. And that's where the things come from. They don't come from, there is always the experience. The moment, or maybe even before, but the moment we come into this world and our senses start to work, that we have that we start to have an exchange with the world, that we are being exposed to the world, that our senses are monitoring the world. We just are acquiring knowledge by an experience that is happening in a living organism. It's not a computer, it's not a machine, it's a living organism that is learning patterns and storing it in order to use them. And it happens at the subconscious level. So most of what we learn, we don't learn it voluntarily. And most of what we learn has been tailored by others for the purpose of controlling us in one way or other, to make us accept certain rules, to make us perceive the reality in a certain way. So this is why when we talk about freedom and democracy and other principles and values, we need to understand that these things, these values, do not exist separated from the world of ideas, from the world of ideological manipulation and cultural manipulation, and they are relational, which means they do not exist without being in relation to something else. We cannot understand them in absolute terms or in individualistic terms, because if we do, that's the short way to become instrumentalized. That's the easiest way that we are going to be easily instrumentalized. without understanding it. And this is why it's very important that we learn how to become intellectually humble. We don't need to feel, it's not about, if we start from a point of humbleness, that we understand the limits of knowledge, the limits of perception, the limits of our cognition, and how then we start, and then if we understand that we live in a world where manipulation and deceit is real, is not some conspiracy, not some conspiracy theory or hypothesis, is a conspiracy fact. We do start to peel the layers, but it has to be a process in which we intentionally, that we do intentionally, not episodically, but in a constant way, if we want to achieve some comprehensive understanding of how the world really works. Because if we learned how the nature works, through science, physics and chemistry and biology and whatever, it's not enough to understand it. It's important that we learn. If we learn psychology and neuroscience and cognitive neuroscience and linguistics and cognitive linguistics, and it's important. But we need to understand that in every narrative, even if we call the narratives that are supposed to spread science facts, they are narratives, and all narratives are ideological. All narratives are biases, have biases, and we need to understand it as well. Maybe mathematics or physics, but it is so. So it is impossible to understand the reality, because there will be always biases and manipulation, and so it's not impossible. There is limits. That's why we need always to be open for correction. But we can understand it. We can understand. We can understand it, and we can do something about it. But we can only do it then through unity and organization. You cannot expect change to happen without a fight. And why? Because power concedes nothing without a demand. Frederick Douglass. And that's how the world works. So do not buy into the idea that everything is relative and we can never understand this and that in a post-truth world and all this shit, because this is all part of the manipulation, intentionally or not, is all part of the manipulation. It's all part of an ideological frame that in the end is very useful to divide us, to atomize us, to deceive, to part of the greater scheme of controlling the narrative, of controlling the ideology, the main ideology, because if it without this the control of the narratives, the control of the cultural and ideological framing, it would be impossible for them to control us. And they know they cannot control all of us, but it doesn't matter. They don't care for dissent that doesn't threaten them, but when dissent or these centers start to have to generate critical mass, oh boy, they come after you, because they know, they understand the danger. It's us that don't understand it. It's us that buy too easily in what they sell, the lies they sell, the half-truths they sell, and then we become tools, useful idiots in their hands, because that's how it works. And I'm not talking about left or I'm talking about the reality of the human condition. We become useful idiots, peons, tool, cannon fodder of those that can fool us. Voltaire said, if they can you believe absurdities, they can make you commit atrocities. Okay? This is how human nature functions. This is our social nature, socio-cultural nature. And we can build a culture of liberation. We can build a culture that might not immunize us. We might not be immune to deception, but we might become much more alert. When we might to fight back, to not allow it to become a disease. To not allow it to control us from within. And that is the point. And this is exactly the point. We are controlled from within, from the depths of our minds, subconscious minds. I don't even need, I'm not talking about any transhumanistic technology, okay? I'm just talking about culture and ideology, okay? We might start to be controlled through other means, but so far we have been controlled by ideological and cultural means. And they work, because if they control the means, if they control academia and media and public relations and infotainment and mass culture and think tanks and everything else, obviously they create the cultural and ideological environment. They spread the narratives to sustain it, and they make sure that most of us are kept entertained within these parameters, these boundaries. And that's the reality. And if you think that freedom is important, your personal freedom is important, you should take care, you should analyze the reality and think if what do you believe, where do you, where does it come from? What you believe, where does it come from? What are the influences? Why do you believe what you believe? And so on and so forth. And see, I mean, and then it is a process, a long process. Because only as human beings we can only, there are dominant narratives controlling us, and in order to, those dominant narratives, they don't go away, they stay there. In order to have a different perception of the world, what you need is new narratives of your choice that you are intentionally, through a critical, intentional process, conscious process, you build new narratives that they will go to become dominant, and the other ones just become irrelevant, for example. They don't go away. They stay there with you. That's how it works. We are a living organism. You cannot delete, it's not a computer. You cannot delete the old stories. They will stay there until you die, or your cognitive faculties become, when dementia just doesn't allow you anymore to function, your cognitive system to function properly. So this is I think this should be part of our aspiration as human beings, of building a life with meaning and purpose, not being just these machines that are supposed to work, to function as to the pursuit of self-interest and profit maximization and wealth accumulation. That as a definition for what is supposed to be a human being. At least that's what I believe. That we need a paradigm shift. Okay? All right. I'm going to end here. Thanks for listening. I will be back soon.